Welcome to the Nate and Dorin podcast. We are professional videographers based in Vancouver, Canada, and we are here to talk about relevant topics within the video and media industry. I'm Nate, and I run Nate Dixon Media.
And I'm Dorin, the videographer, solo entrepreneur offering video production services. Today, we are talking about what to do when a potential client wants to work with you. Yeah, it's always adrenaline pumping.
Oh, yeah, it's a thrill. It's
uh,
fun to see.
like, ooh, another client. Depends how they reach out to you. Either it's in-person conversation or they're a referral. I mostly get email, but I get some phone calls also. Um, And yeah, basically you want to do the same thing every time, like figure out what their video needs are and get to discussing, planning the project and then discussing payment or budget first. For email, usually I think greetings are a great first impression. So I like always
Sup, dude?
reply, yeah, to my email like, dude, thank God you reached out to me. I need work. No, I'm kidding. No, I would say thank you very much for reaching out. And if they provided me information, then I would say, and for providing information regarding your video project. And then I would go into whatever those details are. Um, what do you do, Nate, if a client calls you?
Well, if they call me, then I want to try and get that information, that project information, right then and there, because it can be a quick back and forth.
Hmm.
But a lot of a lot of my pings that happen are from emailing a submission form, like from my website, or like a DM on Instagram or something like that. So, what I typically want to do to get to that phone call stage is I'll set up a discovery call. So, that's a nice, short, usually 10 to 15-minute call that you can get all the information, set expectations, get budget, and all that stuff without like a back and forth email chain. It's just annoying to read and all that kind of stuff. And a phone call is nice because you can, or a Zoom call. Like I try and do a Zoom call too, if possible, to see their face. They can see me, build trust, and like see if this is someone you want to work with. Because you're not trying to like swindle or get this project at any cost. You're not trying to like put on this artificial facade and stuff. And yeah, Doran, your style is very professional and courteous, and that works for you, and that's great. Um, and that can rub a lot of people the right way. So if they can like hear your voice and you come across really professional like that, then like already their first impression of you is like amazing. So one thing that I learned how to do with the discovery call is you want to own the process. So you don't want to just sit back and say, well, tell me about what you want to do, I guess.
Hmm.
Like that doesn't instill confidence, right? You want to own the process. And a great way to do that after you've kind of set up a call time or a Zoom call or whatever, one of the first things you want to say is you want to say, the point of this call is to find out what you need and if I'd be a good fit to help you guys. Does that sound good? And naturally they usually say, yeah, that's great. That sounds amazing. And that starts the conversation off with a yes, Doran.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
like, we're not trying to be all salesman-y, but that's a great subconscious thing. And it affirms to them that you know what you're doing. You're steering the ship here, you're in control. So they're in good hands, and you're going to guide them through getting the information they need and that you need.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, if a potential client messages you on Instagram and they say, "Hey, I'm interested in hiring you as a videographer," or if they just say, "Hey, I need a video done," you would not discuss any details at that point. You would schedule a discovery call. Is that correct?
I think in most cases, yeah. If you feel like you might be getting a little busy or you've got big blocks of time where you're unavailable, say you're filming dance competitions or something in your case, Doran,
Mm-hmm.
you might want to just get the briefest of
Mm-hmm.
details just to like rule it out if it's something you know 100% you can't do.
Mm-hmm.
So you might want to ask, oh, did you have a certain date or time that this event was? Like if it's a wedding or something, it's usually locked in like a year before, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to be able to adjust that. So you might say, oh, what date is it? What times are there? Just to make sure that you're not wasting everyone's time getting all these extra details when oh, well, I'm already spoken for during that
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm, yeah, true. Usually I do inquire on dates first thing. Some projects are like, "Oh, are you available tomorrow?" It's like, "No." Or if they're like, "Oh, this is for July." I'm like, "Oh, that's 5 months from now." Sure, yeah. That's well planned ahead. Good job. Yes.
Mhm,
Um, oh, that's very interesting. I think yeah, it kind of depends on how clients like to communicate also. There's, a variety of styles. Um, I went through a phase where I got a lot of direct phone calls because I have like my phone number on my car and on my website, so people sometimes are more comfortable just directly calling me. But sometimes I get caught in an awkward place, like I'm like at Superstore and it's really loud with carts and banging around or whatever, and kids crying or people laughing, and it's hard to hear the client sometimes. And also, I'm not able to take notes because I'm not at home on my computer.
mm,
But recently what I've done is I have a Bluetooth earpiece while I'm at Superstore so I can like hand hold my phone, still hear the client through the Bluetooth and take notes on my phone at least. Um, and yeah, um, sometimes clients want real quick information. Like if I miss a phone call and I'm like, they'll leave a voicemail. I got too comfortable at one point with like, I'll leave a
mhm,
voicemail. It takes the pressure off of like asking questions and being sharp on the spot. I can look up like, oh, this is your business. Okay, I see your website. Okay, this is you've had videos done before, so I already when I call you back, I already know a lot of what you've already had. I got really comfortable doing that, but then I noticed a few clients would not leave a voicemail. So I get
mhm.
home, I look up the number. Oh, it's from so and so plumbing. Okay, let's call them back. Hey, returning your call. You called me earlier today. I'm Dorin, the videographer. Oh yeah, we were looking for a videographer. We already found one. Okay, thank you. Bye. So sometimes I would be hesitant to schedule something unless it's on the same day. So I think I would be a fan of discovery calls if I do it really quick.
Mhm.
I wouldn't like, oh, you're interested in a videographer. How's like 3 days from now at 5 p.m. How's that? And I don't know, I've had too many like fish slip out of my hands
Mm,
by being too comfortable and waiting. But yeah, different styles and different clients with different approaches.
yeah,
So let's say you get to that discovery call part. What
mhm.
what is that process like?
Well, once you kind of establish that you're owning the process here, then you want to get all the project details. You want to make sure you don't miss anything so that they don't come up later and you're surprised by them.
Yeah.
You can't accurately quote or provide an estimate if you're missing these key pieces of information.
Yeah.
Uh,
So we already touched on date and availability. That should be the first thing you talk about. If you talk about everything else for half an hour and then it's like, so when are we filming tomorrow? No.
yeah, totally.
So first thing that gets them excited, what date is it? This date. I'm available.
Boom. First step taken. Next thing you don't want to neglect is location. Where are you filming this?
Oh wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of another thing here. I've made the assumption that okay, we're just filming this at their place, at their office. And then I realized like, oh, their office has a bunch of other people still working at that hour, phones ringing, people laughing. It's not quiet to film an interview there. So
Mm,
sometimes even though your client's business has a location that they operate at, their operation noise is gonna get in the way. So, uh, yeah, location is not as easy as I thought it would be. It has to be discussed in detail, taking into account noise, daylight, and other factors. You know.
Hmm. Otherwise, you might need to rent a studio space
Hmm.
or some sort of. Do you use any services, Doran, where you can like book spaces to film at? It's kind of like Airbnb, but for filming locations.
Yeah, I think it's called open space.
Yeah, that's what it was called.
Yeah,
Thank you for reminding
yeah,
me. I forgot what the name was,
yeah.
but
I
yeah.
used it a couple of times. Some studios are really nice, like they already have like a green screen or an infinity wall and lighting set up for you. So like literally roll in, set the camera up, turn the lights on, and go.
Hmm.
So at least in the Vancouver, BC, Canada area, there's that luxury
Hmm.
here.
Yep. Uh, and then you kind of want to see, I guess, tied into the date would be the time. Like if it's a wedding,
Mm-hmm.
you want to know what time or if there's an itinerary, how long are things going to take? Is there going to be a giant gap in the middle?
Mm-hmm.
So that can be a key thing to do. Doran, do you want to tell that story again of that lady that split up your filming time into random chunks throughout the day?
Oh yeah, so I guess this is eventually would have had to discuss this also. Another key thing to find out about clients is have they had experience with a videographer before or not? If they have had, then you can relax a little bit and maybe they already know some of the things you're asking and they answer it better. But some clients haven't worked with a videographer before, and this one lady thought that my half day is up to 4 hours of filming, not taking into account transportation between shoot locations, setup time, strike down time. So she had me do an hour and a half in the morning at 6, and then another hour filming right afternoon at a different location, and then sometime in the evening, the last like hour and a half. Like, but that was
Effectively ruining your day from doing anything else.
yes, and a lot of travel and yeah. Um, and sometimes actually you want to discuss and make sure you do have a break in between depending on the project. So for weddings, for example, usually weddings do this because they need a bit of setup time too. But if for some reason they're doing something super simple and quick, like a very quick ceremony here and then a quick reception at the other place, but you need time to pick up the two cameras, pack them up, take them to the second location, set up, and modify camera settings because now you're indoors or whatever, you need to make your client aware and discuss that. Like, hey, I'm gonna need half hour for moving from location A to location B, and then half hour to set up at location B. So can you please
Mm.
postpone starting your reception until 1 hour after instead of half hour after? Stuff like that.
Yeah, you just want to touch base and make sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, yeah, for previous video work, like you were saying, if they have
Mm-hmm.
had videos done, that might set their expectations.
Yeah.
So that can kind of, if you can get them to send you those videos, then you
Mm-hmm.
can get a feel for what they're expecting, and you might have to reuse some like logo animations or
Oh
design
yeah.
assets. So you want them to give those to you at the start of the project so you're not like editing the whole video a certain way and they're like, "Oh, it doesn't match our old videos."
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, "Well, I didn't see your old videos." Or
Mm-hmm.
you should that's on you. You got to ask them
Mm-hmm.
to provide you with those assets that you'll need to edit the video.
Yeah, totally.
So,
Brand
it's a good thing.
consistency.
Yeah, that's good. Have you also ever, Doran, asked a client for like an example video of what they are looking for?
Sometimes I actually have clients directly email that to me. Like if they haven't had video work done before, they'll just say, "Hey, we're interested in a highlight video, something like this," and then they'll link something, and that makes it so easy. Oh man, it's
Mm,
it's like I would. Like, oh man, I would love to have that conversation every day if I could. Like, hey, so based on the reference video you showed me, which aspects did you like and which did you not like? What can we do differently? What did you really like and make sure we incorporate? And that also makes it easier for talking budget.
Hmm. Definitely.
So
That's good.
if they don't provide that and they haven't had video experience, unless they have a crystal clear idea of what they want, I usually either ask them like, well, can you find something, uh, like look at your competitors' videos and let me know which one matches what you would like. But if they don't have idea on artistic style either, then it's up to you to be the creative. Maybe that's their expectation. Like, oh, I don't know. What do you think we should do? We're asking you, right? Then I would take the initiative and look up something similar and maybe find two different styles for like like a hockey team or whatever. There might be two different ways to portray a highlight video, and I would link it to them and underline key elements. Like I wouldn't just link them the video and let them think whatever they want. I would kind of like you said at the beginning, kind of guide them. Like these
Mm-hmm.
guys are going for this effect, and this is creating this impression to your audience. Is this what you want? Does this represent your brand and what you want to go for, or does this different approach appeal to your demographic better? Or to the voice that you want associated, the style you want associated with your. So trying to click and identify and um, trying to bypass the person's preference and kind of making them aware of the brand, uh, um, appearance.
Yeah.
That
Aesthetic.
usually, yeah,
Yeah.
that usually guides them into like, oh, you're right. For the brand's sake, we should go this way. Even though I like the other song, like we're not picking music here. We're going with style and
Yeah, that's a really good point.
hmm
Definitely. Um, oh, another thing you want to get for the discovery call is maybe an idea of what deliverables they're expecting or
hmm
how you, and that can inform how you quote as well. So if they're used to getting a portable hard drive with the video on it,
hmm
then you'd have to factor in buying the appropriate size hard drive.
hmm
Or if they're okay with just getting a download link, then
hmm
you just upload it to your Google Drive, or they can download it off Frame.io or wherever,
hmm
and that makes it straightforward.
Yeah, with the hard drive, you also have to bring a laptop and a mode of transfer, and that's
Mhm,
extra time. If they want it immediately on site at the end of the filming day, for example, if they just want the raw footage,
mm,
yeah, I've had to bill for an extra hour that it took to transfer the files. And before I even transfer, or sorry, after I transfer, before I even hand over the hard drive, hey, let's look at the footage together. We saw it on the camera throughout the day. Let's see it on the laptop. Make sure that everything plays and it's not corrupt.
okay.
So once I get that confirmation, here's the hard drive. Thank you for the check. Um, Pleasure working with you. But most people are okay with download links, or some people just want a like DVD for some reason is still a thing in 2022. I still get like one or two clients a year that's like, my grandma would like to see this, but she doesn't have a computer. DVD, I'm like, my computer doesn't even have a DVD burner. Like, they don't make those anymore. You have to buy it separately. It's phased out. Your grandma, didn't she Zoom through the pandemic? Like, doesn't she have a laptop? uh, but I have had, speaking of deliverables, like I've had resolution be a specific request, which is good to discuss beforehand. Because like for example, let's say you don't have a 4K camera and the client wants a 4K video, then you need to establish that at the beginning and not at the end. When you deliver the video, it's all done. Oh, why is this not 4K? Like,
Yeah.
I've also had codec specific requests. So
What
please,
kind of client would request that in your experience, Doran?
the codec.
Yeah, which clients tend to have.
Clients that like basically production studios that already have an established workflow and they're just outsourcing videographers. So like I've had a few times when companies that are not in BC, so from Eastern Canada, that's where their main headquarters is, but it's cheaper for them to hire a local guy in Vancouver to film the event and just give him the footage than them flying their video team here and their gear to film. It's just more cost effective, less stress. A bit of a risk if you don't get a professional, but they made sure to vet out all the information. Like, what is your camera? This. Okay, we need this format. Are you aware of your camera settings for this codec for S-Log 2? Yes, I am. Hmm. Yeah, had a few of those.
Nice. And then one of the big things that you want to get on this discovery call is the client's budget for this project.
Ah, yes. The
The B word,
the
Dorin.
the delicate process of budget. Yeah. In your experience, Nate, what percentage of your clientele already has a budget and approaches you with it? Hey, we have a video need. This is our budget. Can you make it happen? Does that happen often, or is that like rare?
It's not one of the first things they say, no, but most of the time, thankfully, when I just ask as a default question, like, "Hey, what's your budget for this project?" They'll be able to give me some sort of number. Like, "Oh, we were
Hmm.
thinking around here," or, you
Wow,
know,
nice.
and it's like, "Okay, nice." And it's either, "Oh, well, let's discuss it further," or, "Yeah, I can work with that. Let's continue the conversation and I'll give you a quote."
Right, so if it's lower than what your services are, you would continue the conversation and
I think
then,
at that point, if I know 100% that it wouldn't be worth my time, or I feel like I'd be devaluing myself at that point, then that's where you gotta lean on the fact that you're positioning yourself as a guide.
mhm.
You're not like a salesperson. You're not gonna say, "Well, I'll give you a 20% discount if you promise to give it to me," or you don't wanna do any of that, you know?
Yeah. At the beginning, when I was like desperate for my first few clients, I would say like, well, since you're my first client, I'll give you like a big discount, but you got to give me a shout out on social media. That never worked out good.
For exposure,
Exposure, yeah. Which I
yeah.
did need at the beginning. Like, sorry, I didn't even need exposure. Like, I just needed a like or a review on my page. Like, come on, give me that first 5 star. Come on.
Reviews are really important, that's true.
Yeah.
It's a lot more valuable for the next client to see that five-star review than for them to shout you out on their social media.
Oh yeah, yeah.
"Hey, thanks, Doran." Okay, so yeah, that's just gotta be one of the questions you ask. What's your budget? And they need to tell you their budget. You do not want to say your what you think the project is worth at that point, because sometimes what you think a project is worth and what this client has already budgeted, what they're already expecting to spend, can be
Hmm.
different, you know?
Okay. I can see that. Um, but I know for a fact that a lot of videographers don't operate that way. Um,
Like they have packages.
they have packages.
Yep.
So, for example, for a wedding, you people kind of have packages.
Mhm.
They might custom, like they might not show it on their website and say, "Oh, contact us for a custom pack or for custom pricing." For corporate, it definitely can swing wildly depending how big the corporation is. Which again, if you request their website as part of their submission form, you can look into that and know ahead of time, like, okay, this is a like a 5 employee little financial guidance place, or it's like, oh, these guys are like a massive retailer internationally.
Mhm.
But I know like part of the Facebook freelance videographer community, this question has been asked: How do you budget? Do you go with this approach that you just presented? And a lot
Mhm.
of very successful people are going with that approach, but then there's a lot of very successful people that have this philosophy of I don't charge differently depending on person. I charge the same because this is how I operate. That's more leaning towards like how much do you charge an individual versus a corporation, for like a highlight video for Billy's Kickstarter versus something for Yellow Pages or whatever. I don't know. um and
Something for Microsoft.
yeah,
Yeah.
so it's kind of interesting because I thought these people would be like starter ups that like, oh, you'll phase out of it, but then I look at their work and their websites and I'm like, okay, no, they're just very transparent with their costs, and they just have such a saturated market that it just works for them. It's very stable from that aspect. They know, like, people contact them and they are already accepting their rates because they contacted them. So you kind of have that reassurance already. It's kind of like if you're shopping around to buy a new car, you already know what it costs when you go in to test drive it. You're not gonna test drive it and be like, oh, it's 40 grand. My budget, like, well, don't waste my time.
Hmm.
Um, so how many clients have you approached with this technique? With what's your budget? Did you do this
Honestly,
from the beginning?
almost all the one lately.
Mm-hmm.
Like within the last like 6 months to a year, I've started to adopt this for um, a lot of my discovery calls. And if they don't have an idea, or
Mm-hmm.
if they ask me like, what would a project like this cost,
Mm-hmm.
then this question doesn't work because they're not at that stage.
Mm-hmm.
They're like you say, different clients like a wedding. It makes sense to have like maybe three different packages for a couple to choose from. A corporation usually has a budget and it's like tied to that quarter. So that ties into
Mm-hmm.
their timeline. Like, okay, invoice us by this date, even if the project isn't complete, so we can keep it as part of that budget,
Mm-hmm.
which is also different from, let's say, you know, a single business owner, local business owner, boss babe, who's like wants some Instagram reels or something like that
Mm-hmm.
and just has no clue. She's only done stuff with her phone. She wants to like step up the production value, but she honestly doesn't really have an idea of how much something like this would cost.
Mm-hmm.
So for that, that's harder.
Yeah, Nate, I just wanted to mention that there's a few more golden nuggets of specific client types that you can kind of know that they have a predetermined budget, and that's nonprofits. They definitely have a hard ceiling on budget, and they cannot exceed it. They cannot wiggle it up like some corporate can. Um, and especially charitable nonprofits, those guys also kind of, uh, if their budget is not too high, um, it's sometimes good to kind of go with that lower rate um for a bit of exposure. That is the one time where it really works because charitable nonprofits get a lot of exposure,
Mm,
because they're very involved in the community, and they usually have big donors and sponsors that work with them. So if you befriend a nonprofit, especially a charitable one, you might get referred to one of their big donors.
that's a good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can make a lot of connections there,
Mm-hmm.
especially if it's like a cause that you support or you believe in. Then it makes it easier, and you can help promote them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they can promote you. That's a great point there with nonprofits there, Dorn.
And I just want to ask you, Nate, like, do you believe that a client has like no budget limit in mind when they say like, "Oh, I don't know"? Or do you think like, okay, there is a number that if I go over, you're gonna be like, "Well, I didn't think it would be higher than that." Because I
Well,
think I think they have that number, even if they don't fully are aware of it. They know it's there.
mhm. You know what? That reminds me of the Studio Sherpas, owned by Ryan Coral. His method for this
Mm,
on a discovery call is he throws at a number absurdly high for what the project is. So if you're just like looking to film a basic project, you could say if they still won't give you your budget, if you ask, what's your budget? What's your budget range? Have you done a project like this? If all else fails, you say, what if I told you this video cost $100,000 and see what they say. If they don't bat an eye, then you're like, well, maybe I'm just totally misreading this project. But typically they'll be like, whoa, 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 no, that's way too high. We were thinking
Mm,
more like $10,000,
mm.
and then that gives you something to work off of.
Ah, yeah.
Like you throw something way too high so you don't like lock yourself in to a lower budget than what they were planning on, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah, that's true. For first time working with a videographer, if they if I manage to convince them with or they give me a reference video, I'll point to that. And that's a very
Mm,
convincing argument if I say, "Oh, that reference video that we're going to imitate or take inspiration from, that was most likely done with this budget."
yeah, that definitely helps.
So because they're already invested, they're like, "This is us. We want this to be us. This is what we want." They've like fully committed to this is what we want. The last thing preventing that is you agreeing to the budget, to the cost. Um, so usually it's very rare that they back out at that stage unless it's an absolute like, oh well, we can't get a budget higher for that. Um, but um, they do know next quarter when they set up a budget to if they're still interested in you, they'll reach out to you and they'll be like, "Hey, we got budget this time." So maybe sometimes to not lose a client, you can kind of hint at that or formulate a way where, "Hey, we can make this work if budget's an issue, but this video can wait. Reach out to me again when this is doable, and let's make
Mm,
this happen." Or set up with them, uh, you know, um, delayed payments or like there's so many ways where you can try and appease them. Obviously we discussed don't go with a ridiculous discount
mm,
because then you're just undermining yourself.
mhm, definitely. But yeah, you're right. There's some things you can try and do,
Mm-hmm.
or if they're not ready, set up a reminder for yourself to follow up with them
Mm-hmm.
in a month, 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
Keep them at the top of your mind so that you can remind them that
Mm-hmm.
you exist and you're here to help them. And I guess that kind of ties back into being a guide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's also, and I don't think we mentioned this, there's also clear hints that some clients will give if you pay attention that they have a shoestring budget as it's called. So if instantly at the beginning of the project, or sorry, of the discovery call, they're like, yeah, it's just a really quick thing. It shouldn't take too long. Um, if they're just hinting at how quick and easy and snappy this is, most likely they're gonna say they have a shoestring budget. And I've literally replied to clients saying when they've used that exact phrase, well, go buy yourself some shoestring. You're saying you have shoestring budget, so what can you buy with that shoestring? I am going to set up my website. I'm not going to directly respond to a client with this, but I want to put in my website's FAQ. Um, what if I have a shoestring budget? And I'll link to one of those videos where the Russian guys that made the low budget version of movie trailers.
Oh, yeah.
I'll be like, there you go. If you're okay with
That's what you
that,
can get. Yeah.
yeah. You have a shoestring budget. What if I have a shoestring budget? Yes, I can do this for you. See what these guys did. But anyway, that's just being cheeky.
Yeah.
Ideally, you would want to end the conversation with a positive impression. So, one scenario that happens and is quite regular is sometimes businesses are shopping around. Sometimes they're like, oh, I just want someone that will reassure me this is what I need. This is my video needs. Yes, I can do them. This is the budget. Oh, yes, I can afford that. And it's done. Um, but a lot of times people are like, "Oh, yeah, what's your rate for this? Oh, and what gear do you have? Okay. Can you show me some of your work? Okay, yeah, email that to me. And okay, we're shopping around. We're asking everyone in the area for quotes, and we'll get back to you." So even then, try and end the conversation in with a positive impression. Try and latch onto something that they emphasized and reassure them that, oh yeah, I would totally. I've done plenty of highlight videos for corporate work. They're a lot of fun. This one sounds like a lot of fun. I would love to work with you guys, and just showing that you're more interested in the whole process and their final product rather than your final pay is
Hmm.
might just be that little extra thing that will make them remember you. Sometimes if they present, if there's an issue with, like I had a few clients that I hooked in by, well, I didn't retroactively ask them, but I am assuming based on our conversation where they had some clear needs and something that was like, this is another little extra need, but we don't want to bother budgeting this. Like for example, let's say, okay, let's film on the 15th of this month for a full day, but then we would also want this one clip that will take you half hour to film, but it has to be when it's a full moon or something. I don't know. Or when a specific festival is happening, like we want to get someone with Christmas lights. We need a stock footage of a family, but no stock footage is going to be at this specific landmark that we want, you know? And they're like, yeah, we whatever, we just won't have it. I've thrown out a bit of generosity, like, you know what? I'll make sure me and my family are visiting that place on that night, and you know what? I'll grab it and I'll just include it for the project for you guys. Usually, something like that really does mean a lot to some companies,
Hmm.
right? Like, oh, every other videographer didn't offer us this, but you did, so we're going with you. Sometimes talking less is more useful, actually. I've had a client reach out to me, and when we got to the budget right away because they were like, "Oh, we need a green screen, two camera, we need a S-Log 2." Um, and then I said, "Sure, yeah, these are my cameras. This is my work. This is the price." And they just said, "Oh, wow." Everyone else we talk with, they just ask so many questions and they seem unsure of, like, it's just a simple thing. And you just said, "Yeah, I can do it. Here's my stuff. Here's the budget." And they went with me based on just that, just the fact that I was very
Mm.
succinct and very precise and very like, yeah, I can guide you to this, and this is easy to do, and I'm your guy. And then they later revealed to me who else they reached out to, and it was a couple of my competitors that I'm fully aware of and I've been in contact with, and they're a bigger production house than me also. I was like, wow, I snatched away a client that way. There you go. Sometimes
Right on.
not overwhelming your client and just reassuring them, this is your need. Okay, this is all the information I need. I can give you this. Well, let's make this project happen. Um, yeah. So sometimes presentation, sometimes it's your opening greeting, your end, how you end off a conversation. There's so many ways that you can,
Make sure
um,
you present yourself in the
yeah,
best light.
yeah,
Yeah.
that you can make that potential client be a guaranteed client or ideally even a recurring client. That would be amazing.
Mhm. One thing you also want to make sure on a discovery call is to take some notes, you know,
Yeah.
either with a paper and pen, or what I like to do is I make a Google Doc so that I can access it on any other device. It's
Mm-hmm.
all saved to the cloud and I can refer back to it later. So I'm constantly taking notes throughout the call
Mm-hmm.
because I can forget details pretty easily. So it's good to have all those after the fact for when you're
Yeah.
actually making the quote.
Yeah,
And
when you get busy and you have like six, seven, eight projects in a month, yeah, I've had to start doing that too. Otherwise, I confuse numbers. Like, oh, did I quote 2,000 to this guy or the other guy? Oh man, and that gets really awkward. And if you don't have it written somewhere, so I usually do like a follow-up email. Like following up based on our conversation, here's a quotation.
That's good.
And that's their opportunity to be like, "Oh, actually we um they can clarify something. Like, "Oh, actually we wanted two cameras, not three," or something, you know.
hmm And with a lot of companies or schools and stuff, they'll have strong filters for their email. So if it's not an internal company email, it will just automatically get filtered a lot of the time.
Ooh.
Have you had that? I've totally had that where you send
Um
the quote with an email and you're just waiting and you're like, have they opened it? Have they seen it? What's
I
going
think I
on?
mentioned this in a previous episode, but I use a email tracker. That's a Google Chrome extension, and I can see when they open the email. So I usually check my sent mail once a week to see if any client hasn't read an email. Then I'll either send a second email or reach out to them, whatever, if they give me a phone number or if, you know, some other way I'll, you know, if they have a LinkedIn page or something, yeah. Um, and, but I also know when clients lie, like on invoice payments. Like, hey, it's been a month, and I replied to the same email with the invoice so they see it there. So like, it's been a month. If you can please give me a confirmation that you've received this and a confirmation of estimated time of payment. If you operate on monthly or bi-weekly payout, your booking accounting thing. Oh, for some reason this didn't show up. Like, I see you've viewed it 2 times. So, but I just like smile and say like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I haven't had it
So,
happen where they didn't read it and I found out it was spam. I haven't had that happen, but if it if someone does not reply and uh I contact them later and they're like, "Oh," then I'll know it's this. I wish that
mhm.
there would be a way around it somehow.
Yeah, it's hard. And so I've kind of started to get into the habit of as soon as I send the quote over an email, I'll have their phone number at that point and I'll just shoot them a quick text say, "Hey, just letting you know I just sent the quote over. Be sure to check your spam folder if you don't get it because
Mhm.
sometimes when it emails have links in them, they'll automatically get filtered by your IT department or your aggressive email filtering."
That's a
And then they'll
good
be like,
idea.
"Oh, yeah, it was in the spam folder." So that way you're not both thinking the ball is in the other person's court. You're just like, "Are they gonna
Mm.
look at this quote? Are they gonna, what are they thinking?" Self-doubt, and they're just thinking, "Man, when is this guy gonna send a quote? He said
Oh
he would
man,
send it last night. What's happening?"
that's a good point.
Oh,
Oh, that's such a
yeah,
simple thing. Why didn't I think of that? Yeah, just text them.
yeah. It's
Awesome,
nice and
Nate.
personal as well.
Mm-hmm.
They usually, in my experience, they don't mind if it's, like, outside of work hours
Mm-hmm.
because it's such a quick thing, like, "Hey, I sent you the quote."
Mm-hmm.
Then they know even if they're not gonna check their work, email at that exact moment, like, if it doesn't show up, there's something mismatched, like, "Oh, I actually didn't get that. Can you resend it?"
Mm-hmm.
Or, "Try this other email address." And you can kind of circumvent that potential issue of them not looking at it.
Mm-hmm. I
Yeah.
think my final thought on this topic is something I forgot to mention. I should have mentioned at the beginning when I mentioned like the first impression. I said what I do on email. I think it's really important on a phone call to sound very professional because I noticed at the beginning, because I use my personal cell phone as my business cell phone. So I'd get a phone call, I'd pick up and I'd say hello, and they'd be like, "Hello, who is this?" Like, "Oh, I'm looking for a videographer." Like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I'm Dorin." And then I quickly realized, like, oh, okay, that's so awkward. Let's just I got caller ID and now I see if it's a company, it'll say JoJo's Plumbing or whatever, and I'll be like, "Hello, this is Doran the videographer. How can I help you?" And that automatically sets a very professional tone where they're like, "Oh, okay, I'm talking to the man right away." If it happens to not be a client, then whatever, they can laugh it off. It's a personal call, but
Daddy, mommy let me call from this other phone.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um,
I think that's
yeah, that's a
important.
good point.
Yeah.
And you know what? A nice bonus for us is our company name is tied to our real name.
Oh yeah.
So you can even just say like you just answer every phone call with, "Hey, this is Dorin,"
All
and they're
right.
thinking, "Oh, the videographer." Whereas if you had a name like Quality Films or something, you don't have to say, "Hey, this is Doran of Quality Films."
Right. Yeah.
It can be less cheesy, you know. "Hey, this is
Hmm.
Nate,
Yeah,
Nate
that's true.
Dixon Media," you know.
Huh.
So that's a nice bonus for
For us.
people like us. Yeah, yeah.
You're speaking to Doran, the man, the legend, the videographer himself. How can I bless you with my video talent today?
Sir, your pizza's here.
Thank you.
This is Amazon. Can you come get your package? Yeah.
It's a write off. Gladly.
Yeah. I think that wraps up my thoughts as well
Yeah.
with how to get a client's budget and how to do kind of a your first interactions discovery call and stuff.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your input, Nate. As always, I learned stuff from you, and it's always fun doing these podcasts together. And yeah, how to get a client's budget. Very, very delicate process, lots to think about. And we wish all of you listeners good luck and a lot of success with your potential clients. Hopefully, you've learned a lot today, and thank you for watching and listening.
Be sure to subscribe to not miss an episode of the Nate and Doran podcast. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever you use to listen to podcasts. This has been Nate and Doran. Thank you for watching and listening.